What's going on, my damn people? I'm excited to continue 2024 with an amazing new guest, Libby Greiwe. Today, we're going to be talking about how to unlock efficiency and proven strategies for advisor success. I know some of you out there have goals this year of making more money, growing your practice, having a better quality of life, being able to shut your damn computer off at 5 p.m. and check out from work and check into your family and really get to do things on your personal bucket list. And today we have a very special guest that has not only done this for herself, but it also helps other advisors do this for themselves and their families. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Libby Greiwe is an expert. I want to repeat that. She is an expert in helping advisors create systems and processes to run their business more efficiently so that they have more time and they feel less stressed. Okay. She is also the podcast host of the Efficient Advisor podcast. She is also the community ringleader of the Efficient Advisor Facebook community. And those of you that will be listening in, we will provide links to her Facebook group and her podcast, etc. Highly, highly, highly recommend that you sign up and join those communities. Get on Libby's email list. She provides a ton of value. Okay. She started her own financial planning practice in 2004, before the last Great Recession. Okay, guys, of 2008, 2009.
Are you calling me old, Eric?
No, you and I are both in the same camp, okay? I'm not too far behind you, my friend. And over the years, she scaled to 7 figures as a single advisor while working only 25 hours a week with 2 young kiddos. And she knows how to build a referral-only practice. She knows what the grind is all about. And in 2019, she exited her practice. And now all she does all day long is obsess about how to help advisors get more of what they want, which is more money, more time, more freedom, more sanity. So, Libby G, welcome to the Damn Live podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Libby, I kind of gave you a good intro, but give the folks that are listening a little bit more about your backstory. Like, how the heck did you become the systems to scale guru, and why did you do it?
Well, that's interesting. So yeah, I naturally am not a hyper organized person. I have ADD. Being systematized and processed is not my natural mode of operation. So I'll take you back to 2004 when I started my practice. I was working around the clock like a crazy person, right? I was working nights, I was working weekends, 75, 80 hours a week. If a client wanted to meet at 6 p.m. on Friday night, I was there. I was your girl, doing all of the things. And I know that sounds familiar to a lot of advisors when you're starting your practice and you're grinding away trying to build a business. And about 4 years in, I found out I was pregnant. And that was great because my husband and I wanted a baby. But it was also really scary because for the previous 4 years, I had been that 80-hour a week. And I'm like, there's just no way that I'm going to be able to be the mom that I want to be able to show up in the way that I want to show up as a parent and grind out the hours like this. So I knew there had to be a better way. And I was also really, really fortunate that early in my career, I had built a really great business and I was really, really happy with the revenue that I was making. And I really just wanted to figure out a way to do both, right? There had to be a way to continue making the amount of money that I was making and streamline my practice, be able to work less, and really, frankly, not live in a state of overwhelm. So when I started my business, I was like, I'm an entrepreneur because I just graduated from college and I know everything. And it's like, I'm an entrepreneur and I know I can sleep till noon and work till midnight and do all of these things. And I had absolutely no structure. And I was so attracted to that idea of having no structure. But it wasn't really until I understood that after having the baby and putting these systems into place, that the structure was actually the thing that gave me the most freedom.
I love that. So basically, I tell people, you know, I don't know. You talked about having kiddos. Same thing with me. Kids are the ultimate. Either kids, a family health emergency are
Mhm.
typically two things that force constraints on your life as a advisor, as a business owner. And so you have no choice but to figure out how to make it work is in those scenarios. I mean, I experienced that with my kiddos.
For sure. Yeah, there's nothing better than a baby to teach you how to delegate.
That I mean, that is a fact. So you're coming up in the business. You're gonna have a kiddo.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that like in the ecosystem that you were in, et cetera? And I mean specifically, you know, let's say something real frank. I'm not the guy to beat around the bush. This is a very male dominated industry, and there's all this talk about, you know, you're gonna have a baby. Are you gonna leave the workforce now? So like, what was that like for you as an entrepreneur who's amazing and ambitious? Like, what was that like going through that journey?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, especially at the time, I was working for a really conservative broker dealer, and it was absolutely like beyond male dominated. It was like we were even behind the industry when it came to younger female advisors. And, you know, I can remember showing up to, you know, company wide events, and, you know, everybody around me had that hustle mentality of if you want to make more, you just have to work more and you just have to work harder. And you skimp on expenses and like try to keep that profitability as high as possible, and you just get your wife to work for you for free. And I was like, dang, I need one of these wives. I hear they work for free and that sounds really amazing. Like, where do I find one?
shout out to all the spouses out there supporting, you know. It's
Sure.
like my friend told me a long time ago. She's a successful entrepreneur too. She says every wife needs a wife.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
100%. Yeah. And I was just, so I grew up in this culture where it was, you know, work more to make more, work harder to make more. The only way to do this was to really grind, and it was a badge of honor to burn yourself out and to be exhausted and to, you know, put in the 70, 80 hours a week forever and ever and ever. And I just remember looking around at these guys going like, this is not who I want to be taking advice from. This is not the lifestyle that I'm wanting. And so while they were successful under the definition of our terms of our broker dealer, you know, I was looking at the actual quality of life as a success measurement, and it really just wasn't there. And there weren't a lot of females in my broker dealership that were in it when they were like having children and having small children. The women that were there, their kids were grown and they were kicking butt and taking names. And there just wasn't a lot of camaraderie or women to lean on that had been through that experience.
Yeah. So I feel what you're saying. Number one, not as a woman, but as a young person, and just having watched so many amazing, talented women that, I mean, I'm going to just say the truth. They got trapped into certain parts of our business just because the industry wasn't open close to 20 years ago like it is now, like when you and I started. So, you know, one of the things that we try to incorporate on this podcast is really shining the light on how amazing an opportunity this is for moms to be in this industry. And I'm super excited for you to fly the flagship for this, because the reality of it is like, there's a way to do it. So you're going to have a kiddo. You realize that time's going to be constrained. How do you sit down to figure this all out? Tell me where it starts, this whole systemization, and where you have this, I call it the come to Jesus talk with yourself. You have to get organized as a fellow ADHD person.
Right. Well, so the good news is when you get pregnant, you actually have like a heads up that this stuff is going to be happening.
It's coming. Oh, wow. Okay.
And you have a little bit of a runway to be like, oh, I really need to get, some things in order. And I started pursuing, I always joke that I have my MBA from Amazon. So just reading books and starting to figure out, and really it was just dissecting every single thing that I was doing and looking at my schedule and saying, okay, how can I, so my husband and I at the time were like, well, we have to figure out like who's going to do what, because he was also an entrepreneur. How are we going to make this work? And we're going to have to actually like give up this like idea that entrepreneurs do work whenever they want and however they want. We're going to have to build some structure so that we know what to expect and we can count on like who's watching the baby when, so when we have dedicated time to work. So it started with really getting into this whole idea of a model week and really starting to establish some structure for myself. And initially I bristled at the thought of it, right? Like there was nothing worse than being like, okay, I have a set team meeting on this day at this time. And then from this time to this time, I'll work on meeting prep. And then this time to this time is a meeting, and this time to this, like, and then I have lunch in this window. And then I check my email here. Like the initial thought of that really did make me like bristle and want to vomit. And it went against everything inside of my DNA, especially the ADD side that was like, no, you do what you feel like. And when you're in the mood to do those types of things. And that was like the one thing, if I could share with any advisor, like the thing that made the biggest difference for me was figuring out how to scale myself. I feel like we spend so much time and energy thinking about how do we scale a business and how do we scale our processes and how do we scale our systems and how do we scale our team when we haven't actually figured out time management for ourselves. And so before you worry about scaling anything else, you have to figure out how to scale yourself and how to identify when you're going to get your best quality work. At what point does your work start to diminish? How do you like take that Pareto principle, right? That like 20% of our actions actually drive 80% of our results, and double down on that and automate, delegate, delete, and streamline everything else.
I love that. So those of you listening in, we're going to have a model week template for you. We've got one ready that you can look at. If you don't own your time, somebody else will own it, and it's going to be your clients. And you know what? They can be demanding if you don't set the stage for how you want to run your business. And for those of you that are listening in, I want to pause here before we kind of continue on this conversation. Make 2024 the year where you realize you can't moor yourself to death anymore. Mm-hmm. I used to have this phrase, everything was and. I can do this and this and this and this and this and this and. Here's the reality, guys. The only way you're going to grow this year is if you do less better. And it's more streamlined. So you created this model week, Libby. That was the first thing. And then when did you start building processes? Because one thing that you left out for the people that are listening in is you are an engineer by education. So
yes,
talk to us about process mapping, etc. And then talk to us about the one or two books that you read that kind of helped you synthesize some of these things.
Yeah. So really the way that I went from 80 hours down to 24, 25 hours a week was really through three things. It was simple time-saving techniques. It was building a simple team with the right people in the right roles, with the right culture. And it was building simple systems and processes. So one of the first things they teach you when you go to school for engineering is we look at every problem and go, if this were easy, what would it look like? What's the simplest way with the least amount of moving parts to get from A to B, or to have the thing do the action that you need it to do? And so I started kind of obsessing over, and I'd really hit that point. And this is like my favorite advisor, right? And everybody hits this point where you've made it in the career, right? You can pay your mortgage. You're not worried about starving to death next year. You have some reoccurring revenue and you know how to plan, like you've gotten over the hump, you have some sales skills, and you're looking at your business like, okay, this is really good, but holy smokes, it is the most unorganized, like it is now running me. Like I'm super grateful because this is everything that I had prayed for. But oh my goodness, I've been so busy just trying to get clients and do business and figure it all out that I never actually spent the time to build a business. I just have a Libby that's working all the time and doing all of the things. And so if Libby isn't here, stuff ain't getting done. And so how do I start taking what's in my head and getting it out onto paper and teaching somebody else how to do it. How can I automate some of this? And most importantly, like, what can I delete? What am I doing that isn't actually delivering a lot of value? What am I doing that's not really impactful? What am I doing where the results are directly correlated, or the ROI on the time is not worth it? And how do I get rid of those things and double down and triple down on the things that are actually working really, really well? So it was systems and processes that absolutely saved me. It was simplifying the team, and it was simplifying my time management and actually scaling myself before I worried about scaling anything else.
It makes me laugh when you're talking about like some of these challenges that you have you have a Libby. So those of you that are thinking about scaling yourself, becoming successful without systems is indentured servitude. You're becoming a slave to your business. And I'm going to tell you what, for those of you listening right now and you're in that situation, I want you to walk right into your bathroom and look at the person in the mirror and said, you wanted this. So now you got to figure it out. So you created the systems. You started thinking about scaling yourself. At what point did you make your first hire?
So I had already hired at this point. So my first year in the business, I had just an exceptional year, and I qualified for the top, conference trip at my broker dealer. And I was we were in Hawaii. And I remember being at this event they had for like the top 10 at the company, and then like all of the first time qualifiers. And I remember looking around at these guys and thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm listening to them talk and I'm listening to them share. And, these guys had actual like employees and not just their wives working for them. And they had access to the exact same software, the exact same tools. They were using the same company issued laptop that I was using. Like they really didn't have anything that I didn't have access to. And I just remember thinking, well, like, why not me? And why not now? And so I got back from that trip and immediately hired my first terrible part-time employee. I mean, awful, just awful experience. But
I've been there.
Let anything go unnoticed, right? So I learned a lot.
I think there's something to be said here. Some of you are sitting here. It's better to make a decision and be wrong and learn from it and change quickly than to get stuck in analysis paralysis. So yes. you hired this person, terrible. And it went terrible. Okay, so what was terrible about it? Was it you didn't have a clear understanding of what they were going to do? You didn't have things documented? Like where did this beautiful potential opportunity go wrong?
I think it was D, all of the above. I had never been in a leadership position. I mean, I started my business right when I graduated from school. I had waited until the wheels fell off and then hired versus thinking about hiring when the wheels were shaking. I hadn't scaled myself. We had nothing documented. She was not a great personality fit. She was very, I should have known when she said, I really just don't like having goals or numbers or like quotas or things I'm supposed to do every week. And I'm pretty sure she played solitaire for about 10 hours a week. Wow. Instead of doing things. So I think it was a lot of like, I didn't know what I didn't know. I knew I needed help. And I followed kind of some of that traditional industry recommendation. Like the first thing you do is you hire a phone caller, and then you hire someone to, be in office and answer your phones and do administrative tasks, when realistically, I get questions all the time from advisors like, well, what's the right next hire? And there's not this prescriptive thing, because what I found is hiring a phone caller, she was terrible at it. I had the background, the licensing, the knowledge. I could explain something to a client in a way that was like a hook, and that would get them to come in and be interested and see the reason that we needed to get together, or the reason that we needed to meet to address something specific. And I realized like my ROI on the time on the phone was so much better spent than hers. And I actually needed help doing the stuff that I didn't enjoy, like filling out paperwork. And so just kind of getting rid of a lot of the, like what we were taught is the right way, and realizing that there is no right way, and that every single business has its own roles and positions that need to be filled. And every advisor has their own sweet spot and things that they enjoy and aren't good uses of their time. Like there is that idea like, well, you know, don't do the $20 an hour work. Yeah, sure. But when you're first starting, everything's $20 an hour work. And so it's identifying which pieces actually make the most sense to hire. And I always look at everything kind of on an XY axis of like, how teachable is it and how templatable is it? And then what can I teach in template? And that's the stuff I need to give away first. And then what's the stuff that's a little bit harder to teach, but I can create a template? That's the stuff I'm going to give away second, because I'll actually slow down and take time to build those templates and then teach somebody. It's the stuff that is really, really difficult to teach and really, really difficult to template that I should be spending my time doing.
I love the framing of that. There was so many packed into that. The one that made me chuckle was you're on the phone and you knew how to talk and provide hooks. And for those of you listening here, you have to be a financial rapper. You got to be able to drop a hook to get the client in the door. So I love that part. I was like, oh yeah, that's it. I always feel like I'm rapping. Somebody's got to be good on the phone.
Yeah.
And communicating. That's typically the advisor, right? That can be our gift. The other thing that you talked about is scaling the team and like what went wrong and the processes, etc. Well, now you had a wrong, let's call it, direction with this hire. Talk to me about what, after you let this person go at some point, what were your next hire moves, and then what sort of system moves did you make after learning from that experiment? I'm not going to call it a failure. It's an experiment.
Yeah, just like Disney is not a vacation, it's an adventure. It's the same kind of concept, right? Yeah, so I realized in that first hire that at the end of the day, it all falls on me, right? I'm the CEO, I'm the boss, I'm in charge of this whole thing. If the ship goes down, that's on me. And it was really trying to actually like take the time to analyze, like, what could I have done to make her more successful in that role? And that would have been having very clear objectives of how she should be spending her time and what she should be doing. Having things like team meeting, taking time in my calendar. Like I said, I'd waited until the wheels fell off. And this happens with almost everybody, right? We don't want to spend $50,000, $60,000 a year hiring somebody until we absolutely have to. And so a lot of times advisors wait till the wheels fall off. And then you're just so busy in that like tornado of your business that you don't actually like slow down to have a proper onboarding of a team member, to really teach them not just the tasks that need to be done and handled like right away, but to really understand the overall vision of the practice, how their role fits into the firm, what growth opportunities exist for them within that practice long term. And so for me, it was really starting to carve out time to actually take my leadership role in this business seriously, even if it was just a part-time administrative person. So really kind of stepping back and being like, okay, I'm the common denominator here of whatever happens moving forward. So I need to really think about this strategically like a CEO, build an org chart, identify the roles that need to be filled, whether it's right now or over time. And it's fine if one person is serving multiple roles, but having clearly defined roles that someone on the team can say like, oh, I can eventually move into that and take over that piece, or here's how my role fits into the other roles within this organization, and here's how it serves the greater good of the clients. And so for me, it was really identifying what were the roles within the business and where did I need the most help? What could I teach? What could I template? And what was the stuff that I just bogged me down, took me too much time, I didn't enjoy doing? And that's the operations. So my next hire was actually an operations manager. So I hired a director of operations before I hired an administrative assistant around the next time around. And so this DOO filled all of those roles until we hired them out over time. And then she was in charge of, she served in all of those roles, learned all of those roles, helped me document all of those roles. And then she made the hires within those to support her. So I got to just stay existing in my sweet spot in the advisory space.
So the operations person you hired, did they do the dreaded thing that most of us ADHD or one of the D people hate? Did they take over paperwork and all that other stuff?
Oh yeah, anything that was the business of getting business put through, it absolutely needed to come off of my plate.
I know this is where this is the one thing that I'm gonna, like you said, like every business is different. This is the only one place I would like contrast to you. I think every advisor needs to get somebody that's your first hire. Get somebody that does your paperwork so you can free up more time to be out there, as Libby put it, not me, financially wrapping, giving hooks to potential clients and prospects to come and work with you so that you can grow your firm. So you hired the DOO. She starts filling in your org chart for the other different functions.
Mm-hmm.
What are you then focusing on? And then what other tactics that you implement into your practice to streamline things further, such as niching and the process documenting, etc.?
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things. So one of the things that we did is we started niching down. And so I found the tighter we got on our ideal client avatar and really figuring out who they were, what they needed, how we could fill those solutions, what their experience with previous advisors were, the tighter we got on defining who we wanted to work with and what our offer was, the more streamlined everything became. Because we weren't doing all things to all people, we basically had 2 offers and 2 processes that we followed. And it was easier to teach. It was easier to explain. It was easier to template. And our team did it over and over and over and over and over again. So consistency was really, really high, which made very few errors, very few things fell through the crack because we were doing the same thing, the same way every single time, versus having like all of these little ancillary processes like, oh, well, and for me, my knowledge area got to shrink. I didn't have to know everything about everything. I got to have a depth strategy over a breadth strategy. And we got to be to a place where we were known for something. And that's really how we became 100% referral, is that we were known for doing like this one particular thing and doing it really, really, really well. And our team didn't have to know all of these different ancillary things. Our team didn't have to know all these different products and services that we didn't offer. They didn't know how to have to work with all of these different organizations. We had it so dialed in that everybody on the team had kind of a narrow focus. And that made it just so much easier to teach, easier to template, easier to train, easier to automate, and easier to delegate and continue to hire.
And honestly, easier and quicker to do, because if you're doing the same thing, repetition is the mother of all invention. You start getting really quick about what does meeting prep look like. It's this same thing, and then it's all documented. Okay, I need this report, because I already have a meeting agenda that I'm going to talk about these items and these meetings. It's interesting when you talk about niching. It's become such a like the buzzword in our industry, but I'm gonna be honest, there's been people writing about niching long before it's become a hot. But yeah. So as you're sitting here talking, there's a lot of advisors that are listening right now that if you haven't niched, and you don't have to just go in on one niche, you can have a couple of client avatars, 1 or 2. Most people will tell you 1, but there's a book called Networking with the Affluent and Their Advisors that was written by Thomas Stanley, the guy who wrote the book, The Millionaire Next Door. Mm-hmm. And in his book, he talks about how a lot of advisors have the case of the ones, meaning they got one type of this client, one type of this client, one type of this client. There's no uniformity, so you can't be known for something. You can't specialize. So I really appreciate you talking about niching. So you niched, you streamlined, and you started to grow the practice. At what point, after you hire your DOO, after you niched, after you systematized, after you scaled, like, I don't know about you, so I'm going to ask you this question. But did you ever feel guilty working 25 hours a week with the success of your practice?
Absolutely, all the time. It's really funny. I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day that I did hit a point where I was running $1 million practice. I probably personally was clearing 3/4 of that and working 24 hours a week. And yeah, there definitely was a lot of like mindset work that I had to do around that. And it also became a challenge with goal setting, because you hit a certain point where does the extra $100,000 really make a huge difference? Like, what can I like? It, like you hit this point where it actually becomes kind of a weird mental barrier. And yeah, I did. I had a lot of like guilt around that. So I paid my team incredibly well. Worked really hard to build do some mindset work around that, and to recognize that like I'm getting back paid for a lot of the groundwork that I did in the beginning, and that it's really because it would be like, well, why me? Why me? Like, what am I doing? I'm not special. I'm not smarter than anybody. I've always said that I've never been the smartest person in the room, or the most talented person in the room, or the most extroverted salesperson in the room, but you can't outwork me. And by taking that mentality and saying, okay, you can't outwork me, now you can't out lifestyle me. Like, now I'm going to build this, and I'm going to create these systems, a lifestyle practice to my team. So we started really transitioning into this idea where we'd constantly ask ourselves like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And that's really then how we use that as our North Star for the business. Like, wouldn't it be cool if our whole office was closed every single Friday? And then that way, everyone on my team, who were also moms, could have a day to do the Target errands and go to the grocery and take care of stuff at their house, so that they could be fully present with their families on the weekends. And wouldn't it be cool if like nobody was ever at the office past a certain time? And wouldn't it be cool? And we just started kind of working on how to make the experience of working for me, working for our business, so freaking excellent that there was a lot of loyalty, and there was a lot of joy, and there was a lot of, for me, being able to provide an opportunity like that to 3 women was so much more motivating to me than like the revenue or the unlimited potential, quote unquote, of a business. And I always, I don't think like my business I wasn't trying to scale. I wasn't trying to add, at least at that point in my life, I wasn't trying to add multi-advisor. I wasn't trying to just grow with no end in sight. I really just had my eyes set on highly leveraged, and how could I leverage this as much as humanly possible while not becoming, complacent, but also having some contentment. Like, I still wanted to grow because I knew we could, but I also really wanted to grow so that we could create this amazing work environment. And I think that was one of the critical pieces of our team. We had a lot of longevity with employees, and we had so much fun. It was such a joy to work there, and such a joy to to take personal and professional development of my team really seriously, and to step into that CEO role and that leadership role, even though I was an active advisor, and just watching them grow professionally and personally within that business was so cool.
I absolutely love that, specifically because there were some things that you said in there. You designed the practice and the life that you wanted. And I think a lot of advisors out there, they're like a starving person that you might take to the buffet line, right? You take them there and they eat all they want, and then they get indigestion. Okay. And there's a lot of advisors out there that are starving, right? They don't have as many potential clients to talk to. They don't have enough clients. They don't have enough revenue. And sometimes they have too much month and not enough money to cover the month so that they can take care of their bills. And I think what was insightful is that you built a practice intentionally focused on building the life that you wanted, and you created amazing opportunity for other folks. So you grew the practice, you created systems. The systems created a great culture. The great culture created happy employees. The happy employees took care of your clients. The happy clients gave you introductions to their friends and their families and anybody else that that needed your type of help. And you just grew, and you enjoyed your life. You got over the mental traps of feeling guilty. Like, why is it that I'm working 25 hours and making close to $1 million a year? I'm going to put that out there. And other people are working their tail off, and they don't got this. I can relate. I hear you. At what point did you decide, hey, I'm going to exit, or at what point did you decide to create the Efficient Advisor and coach other advisors that
Yeah.
ultimately led to your exit?
Yeah, great question. So I was, so within a broker dealership, right? Anytime somebody is out there doing something interesting, they're wanting to share that with other advisors. And so advisors all over the country started getting wind of this, young woman with small children somewhere in Ohio, not LA, not New York, not East Coast, not West Coast, like in middle America, who was running this really killer practice and doing it very differently. And so the broker dealer had me, started paying me to go around and speak at different regions. And I found that advisors, it was interesting. Like there was such this like subset of advisors that were really wanting to have a better lifestyle balance, right? They weren't wanting to have this old hustle mentality. If you want to make more, you have to work harder. And I found that I just loved sharing what I had learned, right? Like I'm one of those people that anytime I learn something new, I just want to like turn around and look over my shoulder and tell that person who's like 5 minutes behind me, like, I figured this out. Here, do this, and it's going to make it so much better and faster and easier and cheaper and smarter for you.
Yep.
So I found I loved sharing that, and I mean, I was getting tapped on all the time. So my team and I started hosting these like weekly video series where we were just teaching our systems and processes. And it kind of just bubbled up from there. And we eventually started hosting live workshops where advisors from all over the country would come in and we train them and their teams for 2 days on.
Wait. Are you getting paid at this time for this? Or are you just doing this out of the charity of your heart?
It was a charity for a long time and I loved it. And I was like, something's here. And I was pouring more and more time and effort into it. My kids were school age. So I had these 2 days a week. And people would always ask me like, when your kids are in school, are you going to work full time again? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I will not. And so this was kind of a passion project for me that started kind of building and bubbling. And I really felt like God was calling me to do this. And I felt like I could have a bigger impact on the financial planning community through helping advisors, because I saw so many amazing advisors burn out or have babies and leave the industry. And they would have been amazing advisors and their clients would have been so lucky to have them. And so I felt very strongly that I could impact the community so much in a greater way than just serving the couple hundred households that I had in my book, through helping advisors. And I just found that I loved teaching it. I loved the ahas. I loved people coming back and saying, I tripled my revenue in the last 3 years. Like I'm working less than I ever have been before. I'm not tethered to my phone all weekend. Like I went to my kids' soccer tournament and I forgot my phone at home and I didn't even notice, those things were so much more exciting to me. And I had been running my business for 15, 16 years. I was still in a broker dealership and starting to feel some of the lack of autonomy and freedom that came along with that, and was wanting to just kind of do something a little bit different.
So for those of you, for those of the people that are listening here that are associated with Big Brother, AKA some broker dealer, how did you get them to sign off on the outside business activity of doing this consulting work? Or were they just like, yeah, let's do this because you're going to help us make more money by helping our advisors make more money?
Yeah, I think it kind of started since it was on them. They sort of started the whole thing. And I do think they saw that there was a benefit when advisors were pulling for that information versus the corporate office pushing that type of information. And so I think they recognized that there was a need for it. And the broker dealer that I worked for, it was great. Like they were great. And they were very open to this idea and willing to try something new and try something different and allow us to host these workshops. And the results spoke for themselves. So I think that really is what allowed us to continue doing that.
So you feel the call, and when the big guy, as you referenced, God calls you, you do what you're told. Sometimes you're a little slow like the rest of us in doing what he says. And he's like, hey man, I screamed at you now. Come on, you can hear me. So right. you decide that you're gonna exit. Mm-hmm. How did you identify the person that you were exiting to? And then when did you move full time into, being the consultant strategist of, the Efficient Advisor community and all the consulting work and coaching you're doing with advisors?
Yeah. So we started the search for a firm to purchase us. And it was being in a broker dealership. It was a little bit more limiting as to who we could talk to. We had like a hybrid RIA version, sort of an arm within the broker dealership, and that's ultimately who we sold to. I felt like we were in alignment with philosophy on planning, and they had the support staff and the desire to grow, and had a little bit more autonomy than even I had, and I appreciated that for my clients. So it was really finding a team that was a right fit, but the most important thing to me was that they kept all of my team, and that my team could continue to, I was just so focused on what we had built. I mean, this business was my baby, and the culture and the women that worked with me were just phenomenal. And I didn't want this personal decision to impact them in a negative way, where they were all of a sudden without jobs or whatever. So the team that ultimately purchased us was the best choice. They weren't the highest offer, but they were the best choice from willingness to give everybody raises, keep the entire team intact, maintain our local office, and continue to service our clients in the way that they were accustomed to be serving. And coming from a place with the right heart was the most important part for us. And so we ended up transitioning at the end of 2019. I took a 2-year sabbatical, where my family and I moved to Hawaii, and then we lived in an Airstream during COVID and traveled the US and did all kinds of weird stuff. And then came back to the Efficient Advisor and kind of resurrected the brand at the very beginning of 2022.
I love it. So talk to us about the Efficient Advisor community today. What do you do? How do you help advisors? And if people are listening to this and they're like, hey, I see you, I want that for myself. How do you help advisors today? What are the different levels of systems and community that you've created?
Yeah. So the podcast is a great place to start. When we started the podcast in 2022, it was with a commitment to systems and processes. There were plenty of other advisor coaches out there doing mindset work and talking about marketing and, how to do Facebook ads and like all of this stuff that was not in my sweet spot. And what I had experienced previously, when I started the Efficient Advisor back in 2014, was this deep need for the why behind, like the how behind the why. So, hey, you need to have a way of tracking all of your clients, interests and hobbies, and here's why you need to do that. And then it was like, okay, but like how? Like, what do I track? Where do I keep it? How do I train my team? What do we use it for in the future? Like a lot of the how. So that was where we got really committed to like giving examples, like becoming a share-it-all. Like, here's the template that I use. Here's the language that we use. Here's exactly how we did it and not just why. And so the goal of the Efficient Advisor is that no advisor is ever staring at a blank piece of paper when it comes to trying to figure something out, that they have some sort of chassis to work off of. And so the podcast was originally started, and every week we were covering different like ways of saving time and systems and processes and templates and techniques that we were using. That developed into the Efficient Advisor community on Facebook, which is just a free community where we screen. So you have to be an advisor or an ops person within an advisory practice to be in the group. And we've got about 2,000 members that are just super cool and willing to share. When someone says, hey, I need a template for something, they get 30 people that immediately like jump on it and are like, oh, DM me, I'll share mine. And it's just a cool place for advisors to share and really elevate the industry as a whole, and kind of this idea that everything's proprietary, right? And this one little kind of silo exists now where it's not all about being proprietary. It's about just helping elevate other advisors and helping streamline everybody's practice as a whole so that the industry has a better reputation. And then we do, I work with advisors in 3 different ways. I do a lot of speaking. So I love delivering keynotes and workshops. We do a group coaching cohort that happens twice a year in January and August, where we go through a 10-month curriculum where we build out some of the most important systems inside of advisory practices. And then we have a one-on-one coaching offering as well.
I love that. And the name of your group coaching cohort is Systems to Scale, huh?
Yes.
I love that. For those of you listening, Make sure you go and join Libby's community. Like, I'm in there. There's a lot of other smart, high profile advisors in there. Whatever secret sauce you thought you developed, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not that secret. It's better that you adopt an abundance mindset, because the reality of it is that us as advisors, we cannot humanly help everybody out there that needs our help. There are 360 million Americans that don't got a shot at financial independence without us. And that's part of our mission too, with what we're doing with our advisor network, Libby, and this damn live podcast, is to elevate the entire advisory industry, right? It's, our purpose is to evolve every business we enter into, right? One advisor, one team member, one client at a time. And since you and I share the same philosophy, it's better that we help all of our colleagues, they may be in different places, elevate their game. It's super important. So as you're talking to advisors today, right, and you've started, I'm assuming your first cohort has officially launched for Systems to Scale. What are the 2 or 3 major systems or processes that every advisor is listening to this should start with before they build the entire system?
Yeah, we're actually in our 5th cohort right now, which is really fun. So we've been beta testing and kind of just working through the curriculum and the format and stuff. And so what we've seen over these last 5 is really this desire. Everybody needs a good start to finish prospect to client process. So breaking down literally every step in their process, all of the little tasks that need to happen before, during, after, and in between meetings, and getting that systematized. So getting it documented, creating the standard operating procedures, making the templates, doing the things to automate, to delegate, and to streamline that start to finish process so that they can deliver a high quality offer consistently, and feel like their team has a track. Everybody knows what needs to happen, that their team has a track to run on, that balls aren't being dropped, that nothing's slipping through the cracks. So a start to finish financial, like, hey, from the moment a prospect calls our office to the moment they say yes to us, to being long-term clients, then an onboarding process that is, every process, in my opinion, has 3 layers. So we work through, like, hey, something as simple as onboarding really needs to be much more than just getting funds from Schwab to Fidelity, right? Like, there needs to be a lot of additional things happening here in this onboarding so that those first 100 days of a client's experience with your business are exceptional. And then the third thing we really focus on is, how do we service clients? How do we continue to deliver a lot of value to clients in year 2 and year 4 and year 6? How do we systematically do that versus just kind of having like typical annual reviews? How do we actually create a structure and a strategy to deliver consistent quality advice?
I think a lot of advisors listening to this practice random acts of financial advisory practice running. It's like, you know what? Today, I think I should call some clients. So, like, I'm going to go call some clients.
Yeah.
Today I go through and, who haven't I talked to in a while?
Right.
And, it's review. Okay, what do I got to do for the client? What have we done last time? And like, there's no sort of methodology. So I agree with you. The first 100-day onboarding. What about like ongoing reviews? Is that another?
Yeah, that's that client service.
Calendar.
Yeah, what are we doing in year 2? How are we delivering value to them in year 4? How do we make it different and exciting and deeper? And how do we make it consistent? How do we level it up so that we're not just putting on our snorkel and talking about like a whole bunch of things at a really shallow level? How do we actually get scuba gear on and get super deep into particular planning topics? But how do we do that systematically? How do we have a plan to deliver value ongoing in an organized, structured way?
Are you, when you talk about these systems, obviously technology and tools are involved. Mm-hmm. Are you tool and tech agnostic as long as an advisor can make it work?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as long as, like, I don't care if you use Redtail or Wealthbox or Salesforce. To me, it's inconsequential because they all kind of do similar. As long as you figure out how to make that system work for you, great. I mean, I have some advisors who don't even have a CRM. They just use an Excel spreadsheet. Knock yourself out. I don't care what kind of tool you're using. It's more about having a plan and having it documented and delegating it, automating it, teaching it, streamlining it, and having it in place.
So if you could go back now that you're fully on the other end of the rainbow and you went from, let's call it, ADHD, scatterbrain everywhere, working 80 hours a week down to 25 hours a week, to building a 7-figure plus practice, making close to 7 figures yourself, exiting the business, now running the Efficient Advisor community, podcast, and coaching service, and you're working with advisors. What would you go back and tell yourself when you first started in the business? Or what are some of the things that you think about when you like have an epiphany one day thinking about where you're sitting today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd always tell her, like, hey, it's all going to work out. Like, it, like that fear that you have building a business, and it's all going to work out. However, I mean, I wouldn't change my journey, because I think building that business, having it be super messy with no systems and no processes and being overwhelmed really helped me establish the foundation for the Efficient Advisor, right? Like, I was in it. I was there. I was in those shoes. I fully understand how you can be sitting there going, I think I should have this figured out. Why don't I have this figured out yet? Like, it seems like something that should come easily to me because of where I'm at, but yet it doesn't. And so I feel like all of those experiences were foundational for me to end up here at the Efficient Advisor and wanting to fast track that for other advisors that feel the same way. But I think if I could go back, what I would do differently is I would have started investing in myself earlier. I think I was so worried about spending money and making sure that I was profitable. And, because I spent those first few years not knowing if I was going to make it in the industry. I mean, I remember looking at that vesting schedule in my 401k and be like, there's no way I'm going to be doing this in 7 years. Are you crazy? And I wish I would have started investing in myself earlier, like my own personal development, my own coaching. And I think I would have fast tracked. I would have figured out a lot sooner, and maybe avoided some of those critical errors and perhaps, had a different business trajectory. I mean, I'm grateful for the path that I had, but I do, anytime I meet with a younger advisor, it's always like, start investing in yourself sooner than you think you can. Spend the money, because it will pay itself back, 100-fold over time. And to not have fear around spending money on yourself, if that's one of your, money mindset issues like I had. Like I can spend money easily on everybody else, but I have a hard time spending it on myself, and something that seems so intangible. So if I could go back, that would probably be the one major change that I would make much, much earlier.
I absolutely love that. There's other thing I would add for those of you that are listening. There's no shame. And I'm going to repeat this. There's no shame. There's no embarrassment in having challenges in your business. Every entrepreneur has challenges, has issues in people problems, process problems, money problems. And the reality of it is, until you sit down and have a conversation with yourself and start spending time thinking through your issues, there's always, 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 in today's age, a book you can read, a podcast you can listen to, a YouTube channel you can check out, somebody that you can talk to, some Facebook community you can join, somebody that you can pay to coach you. Okay. Your problems, for those of you that are listening to this podcast, are not unique.
Yeah.
Okay. And somebody told me this a long time ago. We are not in the intelligence business. So you don't need to be high IQ to be a successful financial advisor. And I think that the folks that have higher IQs typically don't necessarily make it. And somebody told me sometimes you have to be smart enough to be dumb enough to follow somebody else's process. Please stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. Talk to Libby, join her community, follow her content, you will get a ton of value. So we're going to get ready to shut down here. Libby, I want to thank you so much for joining us, or sharing your journey with us, and you just bringing your infectious energy and positivity into the entire financial advisor space, and what you're doing to advocate for advisors and helping them live better life, have less stress, make more money, and get freedom of their time back. And I appreciate you wholeheartedly. I know everybody who's listening this does as well. And I thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And I appreciate everything you're doing for the business too.
Thank you so much.